How can an epic fantasy book, something that seems like it's all about, well, magic and hobbits and elves, how can that actually be saying something so profound about our own history, about human nature, even language itself? And how does a made-up world end up feeling so, I don't know, real, like it has this grip on us decades later? Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, but through a specific lens, a rhetorical analysis. Our goal here is to pull out the key bits of knowledge from this analysis to see how Tolkien's very deliberate choices, how he used language, structure, emotion, how all that shapes our experience and gives the book its incredible staying power. And just so you know, for this deep dive, you are experiencing a unique two-voice AI conversation powered by Google's NotebookLM, which lets us dig deeper and maybe get a more dynamic analysis, because this isn't just about the story, the plot points, it's about the artistry, the intentional craft behind it all. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. I mean, the book wasn't written in a vacuum, right? The time period, that must have really seeped into the story itself. He was writing it, roughly 1937 to 49, published mid-50s? That's literally right after World War II. How much of that is really in there?
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating, actually, how deeply the trauma and just the sheer upheaval of the 20th century shaped it. You see it in the depiction of conflict, of power, that struggle between good and evil. Think about the rise of totalitarianism back in and rapid industrialization technology.
Right.
That tension is mirrored, isn't it, between the peaceful Green Shire and then the industrialized machine of Mordor. The devastation of two world wars, the factories eating up the countryside, that feeling of losing a kind of older, maybe mythic England. That's the soil this story grew out of. It gives it this real sense of weight, maybe even loss.
That's a really powerful connection. So, with that heavy backdrop, what was Tolkien actually trying to do? What was his purpose, and who did he think he was writing for?
Well, it seems like he had a few aims.
Yeah.
Definitely to entertain, create this grand fantasy epic. But also, he was very invested in preserving older mythologies and exploring these big moral, existential questions. And I think, crucially, he wanted to offer some kind of hope, maybe redemption, in what felt like a pretty dark time. But what's amazing is how it went beyond that. The themes he explored. Bravery, friendship, sacrifice, even how murky morality can be, they just resonated so widely. It pulled in this huge audience way beyond fantasy fans or academics, all ages really.
Yeah.
He kind of democratized the idea of a hero. It wasn't just kings and warriors.
Right, like Sam was.
Exactly. It could be the quiet loyalty of a gardener, like Sam, or, the immense burden Frodo carries day to day. That idea that heroism is often found in humble places, that's powerful stuff. Still speaks to us now.
That focus on the humble hero, yeah, that's so central. And it makes me think about Tolkien himself. This is where it gets really interesting for me. How does being this, Oxford professor, a philologist, how does that make a fantasy story feel so believable, so credible?
Well, that's where his ethos comes in. His authority, his trustworthiness as the creator. His background wasn't just incidental, it was fundamental. Being a top expert in Old and Middle English, Norse myths, medieval literature, that knowledge is woven into the very fabric of Middle-earth.
How so, specifically?
Think about the languages. He didn't just make up random words. He built entire language systems with internal consistency, with history, the cultures, the historical echoes. It all feels grounded, meticulously thought out. You don't actively think, oh, this feels real because of his linguistic expertise. But subconsciously, that depth, that consistency, it builds incredible trust. It makes the world feel solid, like it existed long before you opened the book.
Okay, so that's the credibility, the trust. But what about the feeling? Why do we care so much about these characters, especially the hobbits? You mentioned Frodo's burden, Sam's loyalty.
Right.
How does a story about, magic rings and orcs manage to connect with our own lives?
Yeah. And that's the pathos, the appeal to emotion. Tolkien is a master at this. It comes through in, several ways. The landscapes themselves, they're described so vividly, they evoke real feelings, awe, sometimes sadness, melancholy. Then you have those very intimate moments, friendship, sacrifice, loss, Sam's devotion to Frodo, Boromir's struggle and fall, the sadness of the elves leaving. These hit hard because they tap into universal human experiences.
Yeah.
And themes like hope, even when things seem completely hopeless, or the idea that ordinary people, ordinary virtues matter immensely, those resonate deeply. Think about Aragorn's speech at the Black Gate, or Sam's little speech about the great stories on the stairs of Cirith Ungol.
Oh, yeah. There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo.
Exactly. Those moments are pure pathos. They're designed to stir courage, optimism, hope, creating this really strong emotional bond between the reader and the story. it stays with you.
It really does. Okay, so we've got the credibility from his expertise of the emotional punch, but it's not just an emotional journey, is it? There's a kind of solid logic underpinning everything too, some clever structural things going on.
Precisely. And that's the logos, the appeal to logic, to reason within the narrative itself. Tolkien didn't just throw events together. There's a very clear structure of cause and effect. Prophecies play out. Choices have real logical consequences based on what you might call the world's moral physics. Actions have weight.
Moral physics, I like that.
Yeah, it's like there are rules to this universe, ethical rules, and they function consistently.
Yeah.
Betrayal isn't just bad, it tangibly corrupts. Compassion, like Bilbo's pity for Gollum, can change the course of events in unexpected but logical ways. It's this strong ethical framework that makes it more than just an adventure story. And he weaves these complex subplots, these cycles of history repeating, using techniques like parallelism or even chiastic structures, these sort of ring-like patterns in the narrative to reinforce the themes logically.
Ring-shaped structures in a book about a ring. Clever.
Yeah. And even the dialogue, especially in scenes like the Council of Elrond or when Gandalf is explaining things, it often presents reasoned arguments, debates about power, fate, the right course of action. It gives the whole thing a real intellectual depth alongside the emotion.
That sounds incredibly intricate. Does that detailed structure ever feel, I don't know, too rigid? Or does it add to the realism? And what about his actual writing style, the techniques he uses on the page?
No, I think the complexity actually enhances the realism. It makes Middle-earth feel ancient and deep, not like something hastily invented. As for techniques, he uses quite a range. The main perspective is third person, sort of all-knowing, but he often zooms right in, focusing deeply on one character's experience, which builds empathy and suspense. And apparently over half the book is direct speech, dialogue.
Really? That much?
Yeah, which allows for such distinct character voices. And then there's that brilliant touch, the idea that the whole thing is a translation of the Red Book of Westmarch, this supposed ancient Hobbit manuscript.
Ah, the framing device?
Exactly. It boosts the verisimilitude enormously, makes it feel like you're reading history, not fiction. Stylistically, the language varies hugely, right? Yeah. Simple, almost rustic speech for the hobbits, when the very archaic formal language for the elves or figures like Denethor. And Gollum's twisted, playful syntax. It does so much work for characterization and atmosphere. Plus, you get incredible imagery, personification, metaphors. And that subtle irony we talked about, like the small, humble hobbits being the ultimate heroes, which kind of playfully subverts epic traditions. You know, digging into this kind of layered analysis, really looking at the mechanics of how a story is built and how it affects us, it's not just academic, is it? It helps you appreciate the artistry so much more. And that's exactly the kind of thing we love getting into on Mindful Moments, our YouTube channel. We use AI analysis like this to spark reflection and hopefully some rational thought about the books that matter to us.
So, okay, we've talked about the history, the credibility, the emotion, the logic, the style. Bringing it all together, how do we sum up why this book lasts? Why does The Lord of the Rings still hit so hard today after all these decades?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How does any fiction achieve that kind of timelessness? I think with Tolkien, it's that layering. It works on so many levels. It's a thrilling adventure, yes, but it's also this profound exploration of evil, of power, of how people endure terrible things. And that mix of the grand, heroic scale with the very relatable, mundane perspective of the hobbits that makes heroism feel accessible, something closer to our own lives, which really connects with a modern audience.
Right. It's not just distant kings and wizards doing everything.
Exactly. And the way he shifts between that high, almost archaic style and more direct, modern-sounding speech makes it readable, approachable, but without losing the sense of epic grandeur. It means you can read it multiple times and get different things. A great story one time, maybe a critique of war or industrialization the next, or even see it as a commentary on environmental loss or power's tendency to corrupt.
And crucially, he avoids being preachy. The plot is so carefully constructed, but he doesn't hit you over the head with the message. He immerses you in the world and lets you wrestle with the ethical questions yourself. Questions about power, temptation, mercy, pity. They don't have easy answers in the book, just like in life. Even the good characters struggle and sometimes fail. It mirrors our own world's complexity, which is why I think it continues to feel relevant.
That makes a lot of sense. If you found this discussion stimulating, if you enjoy digging deeper into incredible books and the ideas behind them, definitely check out Mindful Moments on our YouTube channel and listen to our podcast too. We're always trying to unpack this kind of knowledge. So here's something to think about. How does a fantasy story, through all this careful construction, this rhetoric, manage to shed light on our own world, our own choices, maybe even more effectively than some nonfiction? If you enjoyed this, please do subscribe for more deep dives. Maybe share this one with someone else who's curious about Tolkien or storytelling. And if you feel inspired to revisit Middle-earth after all this, you can find a link to purchase The Lord of the Rings in the description. But most importantly, keep thinking critically about the stories that shape us.